Hello again, everybody. I'm Chris Mooneyham from 680 The Fan, the NFHS Network, and of course from the Touchdown Club of Atlanta. And welcome to this week's edition of My Take. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Just 3 weeks remaining in the Georgia high school football regular season. Absolutely astounding. The season, I know I say this every year. Every year you hear me on here, and I say the same thing, don't I? I realize that. I honestly do. But you notice I say it anyway. It's amazing just how quick the high school football season flies by. And now just 3 weeks remaining in the 2015 regular season. So a great time to take a look at some of the big-time programs around the state. Every year when we reach this point, we start to see the playoffs. The final standings really start to come into focus at about this point because no one has more than 3 games remaining, and some teams have only 2 games left on their schedule, obviously with a bye built in. And so this is a great opportunity for us to look at the standings and look at the potential playoff scenarios, or scenarios, I should say, a better way of saying it, scenarios to where teams can make the playoffs or be eliminated. And of course, by default, always we start to realize the big-time programs around the state that may be left on the outside looking in come, the first week of November, or the second week of November, I guess I should say, because that's when the playoffs start across the state of Georgia. And every year we have at least a handful, and usually a couple of handfuls, of teams that are legendary programs across the state, or have at least been good in the last decade, that end up left out. So just some of the names here. Actually, I say some of the names, but this is a pretty lengthy list. No better place to start than in Region 1 in the 6A classification, where you have Lowndes, Valdosta, and Lee County. 3 teams that a lot of people had preseason playoff picks, and somebody's going to be left out. Lowndes, Valdosta, and Lee County all at 1 and 2 inside of the region. Lowndes and Valdosta play each other coming up here on the last, not the Halloween weekend, but the weekend before. No, I'm right, actually. It is the Halloween weekend. On Friday the 30th, Valdosta and Lowndes will hook it up. And that may decide which of those 2 teams makes it. And then on the last weekend of the year, on the 6th, Lee County and Valdosta play each other. So that might be the elimination process right there, because it looks like Tift County is going to be out of the playoffs and that Camden and Colquitt will be in. And so you've got 3 teams battling for 2 spots. Lowndes, Valdosta, and Lee, all absolutely teams that could win multiple playoff games in 2015. And somebody's going to be left out. Marietta Blue Devils are 0-3 inside of the region and 1-6 overall. They will not be a playoff team in 2015. It hurts a guy who spent the first half of his life in the city of Marietta. It hurts me to say, but the Blue Devils, my gosh, that program, it's unbelievable how far that they have fallen, and especially with a great coaching staff and a really passionate guy helming that program in Scott Burton. Anyway, similar storyline. Well, maybe not similar, but 2 teams in North Fulton that have big-time question marks as to whether or not they're going to make the playoffs. Milton and Alpharetta, 2 rivals. Milton 2-3 inside of their region, 2-5 overall. 2-5 overall. Eagles win last week to stave off playoff elimination. I think it's only a matter of time before they're knocked out of the playoffs. Alpharetta, I think, may reach the playoffs. 4-3 overall. 3-3 inside the region. The problem for Alpharetta is a couple of the teams ahead of them, they've lost to. So they're not just behind in games played, win-loss, they're also behind on tiebreakers. The biggest story, obviously, in 6A football, and you've all probably been sitting there waiting on it, North Gwinnett. The Bulldogs, as bad as we've seen them in quite some time, I'll be the first guy to blast myself when I'm wrong and the first guy to pat myself on the back when I'm right. I saw this coming, unfortunately. Had the chance to see them a lot over the summer. They were thin at some skill positions, and the offensive line was obliterated via graduation. This is a team, North Gwinnett, that's 0-4 inside the region and 2-5 overall. Now, they'll probably get to 500 overall. They're not going to make the playoffs. That's a certainty. They're definitely not making the playoffs in 2015, but they can get to 5-5 by the end of the year. They have Duluth, Meadow Creek, and Mountain View to finish. Ware County is in a little bit of trouble in the 5A classification. They're 3-2 inside of the region, but they're in 5th place in that region. Now, if they win out, they'll make it, and they should win out. But South Effingham, they've got to beat them. That's one of the teams in front of them. If they lose to South Effingham, or really any of those ball games moving forward in their last 3, Ware County could be out of the playoffs. Dell's going to have to probably win a crossover game to get into the state playoffs. They should do that. The Griffin Bears could make the playoffs. It's really 50-50 right now for Griffin. 1-2 inside the region, 3-4 overall. But most likely they're going to have to win a crossover game as well. And if they get into that crossover game to get into the playoffs, it might be against East Side of Covington, who beat them a few weeks ago, 37-12. So things not looking good for Griffin. And then there's the best 4-loss team in the state. Westminster, 3-4 overall, 1-2 inside the region. And I've been saying all along, no worries, this team's going to get it straight. They're going to be okay. They're going to get in the playoffs and win a couple of games. Now I'm starting to think that they may not. They trail both Therrell and Decatur inside of their division. And that's really the complicating mark for them, is that they play inside of a division to where they would have to rally and then get to a play-in game, a crossover game, because they're 3rd in their division. Now, they lost the tiebreaker with Therrell because they lost to them, and they own the tiebreaker on Decatur. I still think somehow, some way, Westminster finds their way into the playoffs, and don't be surprised as a number 4 seed if they come away with a win or 2. We'll see. It's going to be really, really close. And then, to the surprise of many, Washington County, we knew would be down this year, but the 2-time state runner-up has been way down, and I mean way down, 2-1 inside of the region, 2-5 overall. They got Hepzibah and Josie to finish the year. I think they'll make the playoffs, even if they split those 2 games, but I got news for you. While many people will pick them to beat Josie, that's not a slam dunk either. So that a long, long list of some of the great programs throughout the state of Georgia's long, illustrious high school football history who may or may not be in the playoff picture for the rest of 2015. Until next week, I'm Chris Mooneyham for My Take.